Good morning and welcome to Encounter Christian Church. It's only here where we can have a Tennessee fan and a Florida fan on stage together singing. Let's all stand and sing Praise Him, Praise Him.
We're one in the Lord.
Praise Him, Jesus our blessed Redeemer. Sing, O earth, His wonderful love proclaim. Hail Him, highest archangels in glory. Strength and honor give to His holy name. Like a shepherd, Jesus will guard His children. In His arms He carries them all day long. Praise Him, tell of His excellent greatness. Praise Him, ever in joyful song. Praise Him, Jesus our blessed Redeemer. For our sins He suffered and bled and died. He our rock, our hope of eternal salvation. Hail Him, Jesus the crucified. Sound His praises, Jesus who bore our sorrows. Love unbounded, wonderful, deep and strong. Praise Him, tell of His excellent greatness. Praise Him, ever in joyful song. Praise Him, Jesus our blessed Redeemer. Heavenly portals, love with those ring. Jesus, Savior, reigning forever and ever. Crown Him, prophet and priest and king. Christ is coming, over the world victorious. Power and glory unto the Lord belong. Praise Him, tell of His excellent greatness. Praise Him, ever in joyful song.
Speaking of songs, let's sing with a melody that He's given us in our heart. In my heart there rings a melody.
The song that Jesus gave me, it was sent from heaven above. It never was a sweeter melody. 'Tis a melody of love. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody with heaven's harmony. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody of love. I love the Christ who died on Calvary, for He washed my sins away. He put within my heart a melody, and I know it's there to stay. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody with heaven's harmony. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody of love. To play my endless theme in glory. With the angels I will sing. 'Twill be a song with glorious harmony. When the chords of heaven ring. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody with heaven's harmony. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody of love.
You may be seated. We'll continue our song service by singing Trust and Obey.
When we walk with the Lord in the light of His word, what a glory He
John chapter 4, beginning with verse 7. John says, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. And everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God, for God is love. And by this, the love of God was manifested in us, that God has sent his only begotten Son into the world so that we might live through him. In this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins." Let's sing grace that is greater than all our sins.
Marvelous grace of our loving Lord, grace that exceeds our sin and our guilt. Yonder on Calvary's mount outward, there where the blood
You know it's going to be a good morning when you can sing one of hymns. Got two things you love, God's grace and the crimson tide. That worked out pretty good. You ever know one of those people who sings the wrong lyrics to a song, right? Maybe that was you over the years. In fact, they have a name for this. It's called mondegreen. It's a phenomenon where you think you hear the words to the song, but they come out all wrong. That's not anything like it says, right? Let me give you some popular misheard lyrics over the past several years. These are kind of dating back, but one goes like this: every time you go away, you take a piece of meat with you. My sister always said that. She got that one wrong. Every time you go away, you take a piece of what? Me with you. How about this 1980s hit? We built this city on sausage rolls. No, I don't think so. We built this city on rock and roll. Remember that was Starship? How about this one? Sweet dreams are made of cheese. No, for some people they are. How about this one from the Monkees? Then I saw her face, now I'm going to leave her. No, now I'm a believer. How about this from the Beatles? I want to hold your ham. I think that's hand. And then one more, it says, I just died in your barn tonight, mustard no mayonnaise instead. That is, I just died in your arms tonight. It must have been something you said. Sometimes we're not good at listening. We think we hear something, we don't, and we're going to talk about that this morning. But let's talk about last week. We went over the first of our blessed practices, and that is you got to begin in prayer, don't you? It all starts with first coming to God and asking for His wisdom, for His help, for His insight, His discernment. It just makes sense we start right there if we're going to take on this huge and monumental task of trying to love our neighbors and our community and our loved ones. It all begins with God. And I think we had some good discussion in our encounter groups this week talking about that. I heard that was the case, and so I'm so glad. But this week we're moving on to the next one, and is that of listening. Listening. Because you know, if you're really going to pray for your neighbors and find out what's going on in life, you got to listen. And listening is actually one of the best forms of loving that you can ever do for somebody. Just having an ear to hear what's going on in their lives and find out some insights of their background and who they are. And that's important. That's why we're going to spend some time this Sunday in our encounter groups to talk about listening. But we live in a world that doesn't listen very well. I mean, you ever notice this? TV interviews, people are not really listening to each other. They've got their talking points, and they're just going to spout those out, but they don't really, they just kind of talk over each other. And you notice this, I mean, social media is the worst, right? Nobody's really listening out there. You're making your argument. I don't care. People are just, going to say something no matter what you say. You're not really going to win anything there. And then our political arena, and then we have our political debates. Is anybody really listening to each other on that stage? We're going to get more and more of that, but nobody's really hearing each other. You ever had this where, and people to do this, that they're not really listening to what you say, right? And you're talking, and you can tell, though, they're not really listening. I mean, I'm guilty of this. There'll be times when I'm in a conversation with somebody, and I catch myself not really listening to what they're saying. I'm just trying to cue up what I'm going to say next, right? And that's frustrating when it happens to us, because we're pouring our heart out. We're sharing some story. We're giving our opinion on something, and you can tell in their mind they're checked out, or they're really not focused on what you're saying. They're focused on what they're going to say next, aren't they? And that can be frustrating, and it's just not good, and people do that to us. Somebody says the opposite of listening is not speaking, it's waiting to speak. It's waiting to say something. Let me do something here. Just bear with me. Let's try to remain quiet here and listen in the quietness and see what we hear. You just close your eyes for a few seconds here. Let's all just do this real quick and see what we hear. Let's be quiet. Ready? Go. All right. What did you hear? You heard maybe a car go by, heard somebody coughing in the background, heard somebody snoring behind you. You hear the air conditioner going. All those things that, look, all those things, by the way, were pretty much going on when you came in here. You didn't really pay attention to them, you just didn't hear it. And same things happens to us in our lives. Some of these people are speaking, but we just don't hear them for whatever reason. And when that happens, here, I got a slide up here. When people go unheard, you don't really listen to them, it's like they're invisible. And nobody loves that. And it really, it's a big impact because it's like, man, nobody really cares. And you feel like, nobody really loves you if nobody takes the time to listen to you. That's why we're spending so much time on listening, because you know what? If you want to really love somebody, one of the best things you can do is just listen. It doesn't happen a lot. It's like husbands, trying to, I've been still trying to figure this out, in my marriage over the years. And, my wife's helping me with this, okay? When she's telling me something that went on in the day with her, or something going on with a job that she's doing, you know what I'm trying to do when she's telling me? I'm trying to fix this problem for her, right? I'm trying to say, okay, honey, this is what we can do. A, B, C, D, we got it. And you know what? She just shaking her head. And she has to sort of pull me aside and say, over the years, say, Preston, I don't want you to fix this problem, because we men are fixers. That's what we do. But a lot of our spouses are saying, I just want you to hear me out. I just want you to be a sounding board and just empathetically go, oh, yeah, that's tough. Boy, that's not good. Boy, I'm so sorry. Instead of trying to fix it, we just need to listen. And so often in our other people's lives, not necessarily to fix their problem per se, but they just need someone to hear them and know that someone loves them enough to listen to them. Jesus was the ultimate listener, wasn't he? He modeled this second blessed practice like nobody else. Because not only did, of course, he perform these miracles, he told these amazing stories, but he took time over and over again to really listen to the people that he encountered in his life. And over again, he just showed us in the most practical, meaningful ways. We get several examples of that. We could share several examples. Let me just give you one in Luke 18 of this blind beggar. It says in Luke chapter 18, as Jesus approached Jericho, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging. And when they heard the crowd going by, he asked what was happening. They told him, well, Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. And he called out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And those who led the way rebuked him and told him to be quiet. But he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stopped and ordered the man to be brought to him, where he came near. And then Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? Lord, I want to see, he replied. Now, if you look carefully at this story, I don't necessarily think that Jesus' intention was to heal anybody at that moment. He was on his way really ultimately to Jerusalem, where it was the Passover feast. And you remember what happened this time of the year with the population of all these cities and surrounding. I mean, Jericho would have been like Times Square on New Year's Eve, right there in New York City. I mean, it would have just been jam-packed with people. In the midst of this crowd and all this noise and clamoring was one voice of this beggar crying out, Lord, have mercy on me. And what's amazing is, in all that crowd, Jesus hears this guy's voice. I find that remarkable. It's like my wife, when the kids were a little bit younger and they're babies, and at night, it's the middle of the night and you're sleeping. And our kids were upstairs. We were downstairs some of those times. And I'd be dead asleep, and she'd wake me and go, did you hear that? What? Hear what? Somebody's crying, or somebody's calling out for mommy or daddy. I didn't hear any. It's like, wives or just moms have this sixth sense, right? And they can hear when, I'm just sound asleep. I think that's in a sense compares to Jesus. In the midst of this crowd, he hears this voice. Even though everybody's telling him to be quiet, he shouts all the louder. And it's interesting And it goes on in verse 42. Jesus said to him, receive your sight. He has healed you. And immediately, his sight was received his sight, and he praised God. When all the people saw it, they praised God too. Now, probably that's what we expect from Jesus. He sees a blind man and he heals him. But there's more to the story here, because notice what did Jesus ask him before he healed him. He says, what do you want me to do for you? Well, I think Jesus could tell the guy was blind. But I think we get some good insight into the person, the character of Jesus, when he's asking this guy, what do you want me to do for you? Because he wasn't assuming that he knew, in a sense. I mean, obviously Jesus knew, but he wasn't like just assuming, he knew what everybody needed, in a sense. And I think it's an example for us. We don't need just to assume that, we know what people want. That is a bad assumption. And we need to listen to them. I think that's what Jesus is doing this for us, for our sake. We really stop and ask, well, what do you want? What do you need? He doesn't want us to just go forward without asking that. We really want to bless our neighbors. We need to stop and just ask them. Follow Jesus' lead in the way we listen. And this, by the way, this takes intentionality. It takes, putting down our cell phone, turn off the TV sometimes, and Netflix, and stop texting and just give our full attention to whoever it is we need to be listening to. It takes practice. And see, here's this other slide here. See, when you really listen to people then, and you're fully there, you get to know these people. And then that just makes a big difference in their life. It's like, yeah, somebody cares. Somebody wants to hear my story, what's going on in my life. And that doesn't happen a lot in this day and age. People are so busy. You want to stand out as a believer, as a Christian, you just take time to hear people's story, and without really judging them, without really, chiming in. Just say, oh, yes, that I understand. You look at the life of Christ, and you can be so enamored by all these miracles. You can get caught up and enthralled with these stories, and rightly so. But I tell you what, between the miracles and the stories, you know what we find Jesus doing? We find him, when he encounters people, he just takes time to listen to people. In between all these miracles and these stories he's telling, there's these encounters with people where he's just taking time to hear them out and find out what's going on in their life. And so too in our lives, it's not normally in the spectacular that we have an impact on people. It's usually in just the mundane things of life. When we go out to the mailbox and we meet our neighbor and we take time, instead of just saying, oh, how you doing? We take time to say, hey, what's going on? Anything new lately? And you just engage in a conversation with them. You take time to text others how they're really doing. You know what I mean? It's in those day-to-day things and mundane where we are simply engaging in conversation that makes the biggest difference. Michael Frost tells a story about the power of listening, about this group of missionaries that went down to a small, poor village in India. And this group came with resources. They had expertise people with them and all these things. And they went down there and they went to this village way out nowhere and said, look, here's what we can do for you. We can build you a medical clinic so you can bring all your hurting and have them healed, or we can build you a school building so these people, your kids can be educated and the next generation can get out of poverty. We got enough people here to build you a church building so your people can come here and learn more about God every day and on Sundays as too. And then they said, now, what can we do for you? Which reminds us, that's what Jesus asks. Hey, what can I do for you? And they said this, well, here's what we want you to do for us. We want you to build us a mailbox. What? Did you not hear what we said? We can build you a medical clinic. We can build you a church building. We can, build you a schoolhouse. You want a mailbox? What? Did we get that right? And they said, yeah. And they went on to explain, you see, here in India where we are, we don't have a zip code. We don't have a mailbox. And if you don't have a mailbox, you don't have a zip code, I don't care if you're 20,000 people, it's like you don't exist in India and the government doesn't recognize you. You get no help, you get no resources. What we need is to be put on the map. And look, these missionaries, if they never would have asked them, if they just went ahead and built a school building and a church, that'd been okay. But one of their greatest needs at this time, in order for all these other things to help out, was just to help them get a mailbox. And let me tell you, it wasn't no easy task. Bureaucracy, and it took 2 years to get a zip code. But once they did, it was something that really brought a lot of help along, obviously, with the gospel and the good news, right? It's so important, man, that we just sometimes listen to others before we go about with our agenda. In 1816, French doctor René Laennec was not comfortable putting his ear close to a woman's chest to listen to her heartbeat, so he invented something that, doctors still use today, a stethoscope. But he was famous for telling doctors, look, if you use this tool, keep listening to your patients because they'll tell you how you can heal them. I mean, don't just listen to their heart and lungs, but you got to listen to their feelings. You got to listen to the person. You got to listen to them. And this is so important. One of the greatest gifts we can give people is listen to their hearts, their stories. But not many people wants to listen to people's stories today. And one of the most powerful and practical things we can do to bless people is simply listen to them. When's the last time you asked that single mom at the end of the neighborhood how she's doing, if anything we can do to help you out? Or that person, at the job who's right next to you, what's going on in their lives, or the cashier when they're telling you about their husband was in the hospital, you actually just, pay attention and ask some more questions. One of the books that I read early on that helped me out was the classic 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. But one of those habits he talks about is you got to seek to understand before seeking to be understood. Seek to understand before seeking to be understood. Proverbs says it even better. To answer before listening, that's folly and shame. That's just not very smart, is it? So we want to stop and listen to the people and their hearts. But another thing we want to listen is to the places where people are, the communities and what's going on around us. That's important too. And that's a little bit different than just listening to people. We get an example of that in the Apostle Paul. In Acts chapter 17, the Apostle Paul, this missionary, goes to the city of Athens, this ancient city in Greece, where all they're worrying about is what's going on in the world. They just want to know the latest and greatest. These people love social media in Athens. It was a center of, sophistication and culture, and they were prideful of their rich heritage they had, their culture heritage. But Paul, or Luke, who writes this about Paul in Athens, in Acts 17 says this in verse 21, all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking and listening to the latest and greatest ideas. Inquiring minds want to know. And they were curious in Athens. And so Paul is going to just take some time to walk around the city, to observe, to listen to the places, the community, and see how he can best love them and serve them and share the gospel with them, taking time to carefully observe. And then it says in verse 22, Paul then stood up in this meeting of the Areopagus and said, people of Athens, I see in every way you're very religious. For as I walked around and I looked very carefully at the objects of your worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you're ignorant of the very thing you worship. And that is what I'm going to proclaim to you. People in Athens wanted more and more knowledge. So Paul used the fact that they worshiped a God they didn't know to tell them about a God they could know. Isn't that ingenious? And Paul listened, and because he observed, he took time to listen to the place he was in. He got this opportunity to speak in this important forum, and when he got that opportunity, he knew what to do. I think Paul's strategy is still relevant for us today in the 21st century. There's an author, Rich Gorman, and he talks about when it comes to a place, there's 4 P's of a place that we need to pay attention to if we're going to love our people in that place. The 4 P's of that place is, first of all, you got to notice the pain. What I mean is, and this works individually or it works in a community. What are people struggling with in your community? Is it loneliness? Is it isolation? Is it a sickness? Is it finances? Is it some addiction? What in your area are people hurting? What is it this person you're talking to, what is it the pain they're going through? That's important that we listen to that. The next one is pennies. That is economically. Where in this community are things thriving? Where are people really in the throes of poverty? And when you're talking individually, you know, where are these people hurting? Where they need help? Financially, we live in a day and age right now where things are so tight. People are barely making it because, you know, that's just the way it is at this point. But it's important that we have an ear that understands and sees that so we can best love them. Another is power. We understand where the power is in communities, whether it's in a school board, a homeowners association, all these things, you know, politically. Because like Paul, he understood if he's going to make an impact, sometimes you got to know where the power is. And so I think that's important too. And then another is parties. What I mean by this, what do people celebrate? What do people really take pride in? You know, is it education or whatever it is? You can know that, oh, that's important to me. It's family. And because of that, you know them. You know this community better like Paul did. Dave Ferguson, his brother, John and his wife, Lisa, he says, when they moved up to the north side of Chicago years ago, they moved into this neighborhood and they wanted to go to the neighborhood association meeting. And said they went there for the first time expecting maybe 75, 50 people. There were 10 people there. And he said, we sat down, the regulars set this oval table. Like, I don't know, most of the crowd, and he says, me and my wife sat on the outside and one other couple. And they had their like board meeting there in the middle, and they just talked. And after an hour, the board meeting was done. It was open forum. And so they looked at me and my wife expecting us to say something. And so, you know, I just said, well, guys, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to sit here and listen to all you're doing in the neighborhood. It's really great. We really appreciate it. And John said, that's all I said. He said, you would have thought I had agreed to underwrite the next fundraising program. Because they were expecting us newcomers to have some kind of complaint, some kind of criticism, be ornery, something like that. He says, and we just sat there and said, thank you for all you're doing. He said, I'll never forget the power of just listening, saying thanks. It's true, isn't it? You want to be loving, make an impact in the world. You just take time to listen to people. What a huge difference, because most people don't. Most people don't take time to listen. Paul would have done anything to bless the city of Athens, and that's why he walked around and he listened to the city first. One of the first steps in loving our neighbor is listening to them. The places we live, the places we work, our neighborhoods, our schools, they're constantly speaking. Like the noises in this room, they're constantly going on. It's just, do we have an ear to hear? Jesus heard one man lone voice in a crowd, and he asked, what do you want me to do? Paul was willing to slow down and listen before he spoke. And I think we'll do well to follow the lead of Jesus in Paul's example in listening to other people. Sir William Osler was one of the fathers of modern medicine. And he was always known for telling his medical students, look, you got to spend some time working with patients. You know, I mean, you focus, yes, on their problems, their illnesses, but you got to just get to know these patients too. You know, you got to get your head out of the book sometimes and quit working with all these cadavers and work with real people. You know, get your head out of the books, because you got to find out what's going on. You got to get to know these people, their background, their stories, because that's what's going to help you in healing them and helping them. And so These students saw this firsthand one day when Dr. Osler walked into the children's ward of the hospital. That's a long, long time ago. And this is when all the children, the sick children, were kept in one large room. And Dr. Osler walked in there and he noticed one little girl that was being isolated from all the other kids. So he wanted to find out about her. So he asked the head nurse, hey, what's the story with this girl? And the nurse said, well, her father is deceased. Her mother is deceased, and her father came by one time and dropped off this baby doll, and that's good, but he's never come back. So all the other kids know that she doesn't receive any visitors, so they think something must be really wrong with her, and so they've just left her to herself. Now, Dr. Osler, knowing that background about that little girl, now he intentionally goes out to seek to give her special attention. And so one day he walked into this room and he goes over to this little girl and says, hey, do you mind if we talk a little bit? Can I just sit down here with you? You've been doing so good. I'm so proud of you. And look, I don't have any tests we need to run today. I just want to talk if that's okay. And all the other boys and girls are like paying attention because this is the great Dr. Osler, he's the doctor of the hospital, not just the children's ward, but the doctor. And he wants to talk to her. Wow, she must be really important. And so he sat down with her, and they just start talking like they're best friends. And the whole conversation is all about her. He's just asking her one question about her, and then he takes that baby doll and says, hey, do you mind if I give her an exam too? And he just puts the stethoscope, gives her an exam, and that puts a big smile on her face. And then he leans over and he whispers something into her ear. And then he stands up before he leaves, and he says, now look, That's a secret just between you and I. And he says it loud enough for everybody to hear. That's just a secret between you and me, right? And then he leaves. And when he leaves, all those boys and girls come over to her bedside and go, oh, the doctor told you a secret? What did he tell you? And all of a sudden, this little girl that was isolated, that was ostracized, now she has this sense of worth and self-worth. All because of the one who paid attention to her, all because of the one who cared for her, all because of the one who listened to her. We're listening, aren't we? Like Jesus. Because the world's got a story to tell us if we'll just listen. We're listening, aren't we? Aren't we? pass the offering plates, but we do consider it important that we give back part of our giving financially as God has blessed us. So if that's something that God's working in your heart, we have an offering box out in the back. You can put your offerings. You can go online on the church app, or you can mail it in as well. Let's bow. God, we thank you that you listen to us, that you have an open heart, an open ear to us 24/7. And God, you understand exactly what we're going through, because God, you sent your one and only Son to come and live on this earth, to experience life like us and even more so, and ultimately to give his life as a ransom for many. So God, you can empathize. You know exactly what we've been through. And so God, we're so thankful for our mediator, our intercessor, God, who goes between us. And I pray as your people, we will always be willing to come to you. Whether we have a good week or a bad week, God, or we committed a sin we know that we should not do, God, we still are willing to come to you because, God, you're a good, good Father. And you want to hear us out. So, God, I thank you for this time we can draw closer to you, remembering the sacrifice of your Son, Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen.
We're really glad that you're here with us today, whether it's here in person or if you're watching us online. We just want to say that we are really glad that you're here. If it's one of your first times here, if you're visiting with us, we are really glad that you're here. We'd love to get to know you, answer any questions that you might have. So on your way out to the left at the hub, there will be somebody out there who can do that, who can answer any questions and just talk to you and share a little bit about what's going on here at Encounter Christian Church. And we also have a gift that we would like to give to you. Immediately following this service, there is going to be an informational meeting regarding mission trips that are coming up in 2024. If you have any interest in that, if it's even just a fleeting interest that you've heard about what's been going on over the last couple of years, and you think that might be something that you're interested in, just come to the front here after this service, and we're going to share what's coming up in the next year. It's going to be a tremendous opportunity, so please don't overlook that. If you're feeling even the slightest twinge, come up here and just get some information that we'll share with you. We had, last week, we had our Never Alone Widows Ministry, brand new ministry kick off. And so there's a few pictures that we're showing you of what went on there. Great new ministry that is really exciting. So I know that there are ways for you to get involved in that. Even if it's just financially, you can go onto our website or our app, and you can pick from the drop down and give to support that ministry. But if you are interested in being more involved, just contact us through our app or on the website, send it to the church office, and we'll get you in touch with somebody who can plug you into that ministry. We also had our Young at Heart, our Young at Heart group went out to the Orlando Museum of History, Orlando History Museum, this last week. And so here's some pictures of that. If that's something that you'd want to get involved in, we have our small groups that we've been talking about, but there are other fellowship opportunities, and this is one of them. So if you want to get involved in that as well, you can just send us a note to the church office, and we'll get you plugged in there as well. We're going to go ahead and close. Let's all stand, and we will sing our closing song, Now I Belong to Jesus.